Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be talking about the Yoga 720 and my experience with it after having it for about a month. I did do an unboxing and a first look of this laptop. I will put the links in the description below. So let's get started. Since having the laptop for about a month or so, I've really gotten to experience what I really like about this laptop and what I wish they would do better about it. First, the screen is a full HD 13.3 inch display. I think it's big enough for what for even multitasking, for what I really have to do. I usually am typing Word documents and maybe even going back and forth between browser pages, and I think it's big enough to have things side by side as well. I really do think the laptop runs really well. The one that I bought comes with 256 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM with an i5 Intel Core processor, 7th generation. There is a cheaper version with the same processor. It's got 128 gigabytes of storage and 4 gigs of RAM, and then there is a more expensive version with an i7 Intel Core processor, 512 gigabytes of storage, and 16 gigabytes of RAM. One thing that people were complaining about while I was looking at the forums and some of the comments in my previous videos was the fan. Yes, the fan I still think is somewhat of an issue. I wish it could be quieter. It definitely can get really loud at times. It's not as bad or frequent as people say it is, but it still can get really irritating when it does get really loud. It usually gets pretty loud when it gets hot, so if it's sitting on my bed or if it's sitting on my lap, the fan grill tends to be blocked a little bit, so then it gets really hot and the fan gets really loud. Besides that, it's not too bad. Sometimes heavier software like Photoshop, InDesign, any of the Adobe Suite apps tend to really make the fan go a lot faster, which makes it really loud. Besides that, it's not terribly bad. Sometimes multitasking or having a few videos up tend to make it really hot, which again makes the fan really loud. But it's not as bad as people say it is, but it's also bad enough that it's probably one of the cons of this laptop. I think one of the best things about this laptop for the money, again, is the aluminum finish of it. I really like the build of it. I like how it feels. It feels pretty sturdy. Sometimes if you're holding it with one hand, you can kind of hear it creak, which is a little bit concerning, but it still feels pretty solid. One thing that I really didn't like about the build is that the hinges, the actual aluminum casing, and the fingerprint sensor and the mouse or the touchpad are all kind of like different shades of silver. I would have really liked to seen a more cohesive look, kind of all together. Even the hinges maybe match like the mouse pad and the fingerprint sensor, or I don't know, have out of the three, maybe two of them match, maybe one be off, but it was just a little bit too mismatchy that I just didn't like. But again, that's all aesthetics. It's something that doesn't really affect the performance of the laptop. It still feels great, and it still feels really sturdy for what it is. So the battery life on this laptop is pretty decent. When plugged in and fully charged, it does tell me that it's got a little bit more than 7 hours of battery life, which is pretty good. With the battery saver mode, it usually lasts a lot longer than the 7 hours. And I'll usually turn off all the other settings, maybe turn the brightness down a little bit. It'll definitely last you a little bit longer than 7 hours. One of my favorite things about this laptop is that it has 2 USB 3 Thunderbolt ports and a regular USB-A port as well. So it actually charges with both of the USB 3 ports, which is great. I think this is probably one of the best pluses about this laptop. Again, it's a decent price, and it's pretty much future-proof, and past-proof, I guess. You still do have that regular USB-A port, unlike the MacBooks, and you have the USB 3 port. So you're it's a good laptop to transition into what will be the future of cables. Right now I do have a Google Pixel, and I think it's great that I can interchangeably use the same charger. Probably not highly recommended, but it still works. My phone gets charged with either cable, and so does the laptop, vice versa. Again, so I think this is a good laptop to have that will probably last you a good bit. I have bought a dongle or two just to have an SD card reader. It's not the biggest thing. It's not a huge dongle. It's not something that I need entirely. And again, I don't need that many dongles because there is still a USB-A port, which is really convenient. Another good thing about this laptop is that it is a 2-in-1. So I don't really use the tablet side of it, which would be great if you maybe draw or take notes in class, but again, I usually type my notes. But what I do like about it though is that it does flip into a temp mode. which is great when I'm watching movies in bed. I usually use it as my TV. I just flip it over into a tent mode and it just kind of sits there and plays Netflix or Hulu. Probably my number one top favorite thing about this laptop are the speakers. The speakers are the JBL stereo speakers optimized with Dolby Audio. I think they're loud for being located at the bottom. Yes, they sometimes can get blocked when you're on the bed or something like that. But again, like I mentioned before, you can usually flip it into tent mode if you're watching a video or binge watching Netflix or Hulu. And the speakers are actually facing directly at you because they're kind of on an angled on the side. So I think they're really, really loud, they're really, really good, and they kind of create like this really small surround sound setup that they have. It doesn't just sound like it's coming straight from the speakers, it kind of sounds like it's coming from like this bubble of sound from the laptop. Overall, I think the Yoga 720 is a good laptop for the money and packs neat features that again you might find on higher end laptops. There's a fingerprint sensor, the USB Thunderbolt sensor. I think the speakers are really good. The only downside that I really see is the fan that just gets really, really loud. And maybe the battery life could be a lot better as well. It's not terrible, but it could always be better. But let me know what you think of the Yoga 720 in the comments below, and if you plan on buying it, or if you have it and what you think of it. But until next time, thanks for watching. This has been my review of the Yoga 720 after having it for a month.